investigations into the killing. A 60-year-old penal man was found dead in a river after reportedly being beaten. Lucky Palm Jagdeo was last seen lying near a bar on February 23rd when relatives were alerted to an attack. By the time they arrived, his body was already in the water. Police have detained a suspect as investigations continue. Internationally, President Donald Trump is meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron Monday, 24th of February. The first European leader Trump will welcome to the White House in his second term. Trump and Macron are expected to discuss the war in Ukraine, where the two have expressed starkly different views. While Macron has argued that any negotiated end to the war must come with strong and credible security guarantees for the Ukrainians, Trump has termed Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky a dictator and declined to name anything Russia should be willing to concede to achieve peace. Trump's tariffs are also likely to be a subject of discussion, with the European Union, of which France is a member, saying this month it would respond firmly if Trump hits it with tariffs. Trump has since signed a memo calling for fair and reciprocal trade tariffs on all major U.S. trading partners. Well, that's news to the hour on WESN. I'm Naomi Macnish. Thanks for watching.
WESN.
Attention everyone! The Office of the Prime Minister Communications has launched a brand new WhatsApp channel designed to keep you informed and connected like never before. Get real-time updates, breaking news, and important information directly from the source. With our WhatsApp channel, you'll always know what's happening when it's happening. Joining is easy. Use your phone camera, scan this QR code, tap follow, and that's it. You're in. Be sure to tap the notification bell to never miss an update. Stay informed, stay empowered. Join the conversation with the Office of the Prime Minister Communications WhatsApp channel today.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for. It's called loss and damage, and we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region. Man
is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
WESN.
So, there's a couple of things with regard to the education system that I want to speak about today. It actually was not necessarily intentional, because what I really wanted to get to is at the end, and then there were a couple of stories from yesterday and today that leads us to some very different aspects, all of which should be somewhat concerning. but maybe not necessarily be all and end all that the sky is falling. So the first part is, there was an event at a secondary school. The parents of some of the students that attended this event are complaining that their children, most of them I believe, I assume, well, at least in one case, the interviewed parent in the news article, that child was in, I believe, Form 1 or a lower form. They have severe eye irritation and blurred vision, and concerns that permanent damage to the child's vision may have occurred at a foam party event where there are questions with regards to the foam mix, because when the foam got into the eyes, it caused irritation that persists well beyond the day of the event. And the one parent, so you have to, this is an anecdotal testimony with not necessarily supporting evidence behind it beyond that individual experience, believes that the actual figure of students affected may exceed 100, which is bad enough. But the real part about this, right, is that apparently the mother is criticizing basically the adults in this situation, right? The Ministry of Education hasn't told them anything. The Parent-Teacher Association says that they're not responsible, and Form 6 students were responsible for holding this event, who may technically be adults. But my issue with this is, that is a very, very weak defense. Now, it doesn't necessarily say, I don't think the school is saying anything. The school in question being Hillview College, based on the reports. But the fact of the matter is, someone has to authorize the event, and that authorization then includes giving whatever suitable authority to the Form 6 students. But to say that somehow the Form 6 students have an ultimate duty of care over the other students that participate, I find that hard to believe. Because generally speaking, and it was reported that the event was advertised as being hosted by the school. Now, that may not be the be-all and the end-all of the arrangement and how the responsibilities actually were, distributed or delineated or what have you. But at the end of the day, if it's on the school compound, the school itself has a certain level of responsibility. And this is February 22nd, so I believe this might have been Saturday, right? Even though it's not a school day, the management of the school has a certain responsibility. Authorizing the Form 6 students to hold an event, whoever authorized that has a certain responsibility. If it was the PTA to whatever extent involved, because they are the parents of the student, well, essentially, right? They are the representative parent body. So I can't say the parents of the Form 6 students, but to some degree, they represent the parents of all the students. They have some responsibility. The fact that they want to say that it's a Form 6 students that held this event, you want to throw the Form 6 students under the bus? In what world could any institution say, no, the older students who may or may not be adults, they bear all the liability? Yes, to some extent, you want to give your students responsibilities and let them participate in handling the organization and implementation of different things in the school, including events. But safety of their fellow students should never be primarily invested into them. They're not a parental figure or a guardian in that case. When parents of the students, of the other students, of the students affected, dropped their child off, gave their child permission to go to said event, they did not, I think it's reasonable to assume, they did not agree that Form 6 students would have been the guardians of their child, because if it's a Form 1 student or Form 2 or Form 3 or Form 4, etc., this is one of the arguments. I remember when I was going to school, a lot of my fellow classmates in either lower 6 or upper 6 did not understand why the school had to take precaution, had to be wary, had to deny permission of the lower form students from buying food outside of the school. And basically it was, ultimately speaking, the school was responsible for them. The school had to ensure that whatever it is that they had access to did not have any risks whatsoever. And if they couldn't do that, then they had to ban the students from partaking in whatever it was. If there were any sorts of questions with regards to sanitation and health risks, because the students were placed in their care, they're responsible. Somebody with a roadside stall gets the children sick. Yeah, they may have some liability, but ultimately the school is responsible as well. They have to answer to the parents. So I find that statement, the Parent-Teacher Association is not responsible for this, that it's the sixth form students that held this event. Well then now, if that is the case, the parents need to, okay, are you trying to say that the sixth form students are legally liable, PTA? Because we could challenge that, and if that fails, then that means somebody else, whether it be the school or you, are liable. They could both be challenged, you know. It's fine. At some point, a judge will figure out who is actually liable. I don't think the people whose children potentially are hit necessarily cares who takes the blame and who bears the responsibility. The main reason why you want someone to bear the responsibility is so that this does not happen again. And I don't know to what extent the school was involved or was not involved, but somebody needs to come out and figure this out quick, because you have a PTA and a school that kind of looking sus right now. All right. Let me save that. I still can't get over it. Oh, it's the sixth form students' fault. Really? I didn't realize that they had guardianship, that they had that level of recognition of response. Anyway, going back to the situation with regards to, let's treat people with guns as terrorists. I would just like to point out that the Terrorist Act talks about violence and then adds on, and is intended to compel a government or an international organization to do or refrain from doing any act or intimidate the public or a section of the public. Now, if you want to try and argue that criminal gangs, their purpose is to intimidate the public, good luck with that. That's very subjective, because I would argue, no, that is technically not what their purpose is. Their purpose is to control the drug blocks, control the human trafficking, the gun smuggling, the drug smuggling, the extortion rackets. That's their purpose. Their purpose is to make themselves money by whatever illegal means that they could get it. The thing about intimidating the public, that speaks to, and maybe it's not the best way to write it out, but again, it speaks to, I have an issue with your country and I want to hurt your country. I don't want money from your country. I don't want your country to necessarily do anything for me with regards to trade or economic activity. No. I want to intimidate your country. I want to cower your country. I want to hurt your country. So I do find this whole exercise to be rather lazy from a legislative point of view. And ironically, again, credit to Guy Griffith, he brought this up first. So it's interesting. I guess to some extent you could say credit to the government for being willing to take an idea from someone outside of the government. I mean, I guess Gary should just have on a slogan, they're stealing my ideas. Now, that said, I don't necessarily agree with the idea in that form, because let me reiterate the point I've made already. If you want to respond to gang violence in a similar manner to terrorism, you can. You just have your own laws which you pass in Parliament with regards to how you treat people having this level of firepower. And it should not be limited to automatic weapons. There should be a consideration of, is the gun an automatic gun? whether submachine gun or rifle cartridge or shotgun, right? But then also, you could get high-powered weapons that are just as dangerous, that are not automatic. You could take a semi-automatic 5.56 or 7.62 rifle and shoot it into a crowd. You could unload 30 bullets relatively quick enough, and those bullets will go through the first target that it hits, or the first human in its trajectory, and could go and hit another human, and it will be just as bad. Or you could fire a shotgun, you know, buckshot into a crowd, fire off 2, 3, 4 shots, or a semi-automatic shotgun, it would be just as bad. So those things probably need to be addressed, as well as high-powered rifles, which are technically not prohibited. Granted, yes, subjectively, the commissioner will probably never give an FUL for a 50 caliber rifle, but still, you could have the appropriate, I guess we don't, even our Firearms Act has way too many loopholes, empty space. It does not address certain considerations or factors. It's ridiculous. The thing about it is, because of that second clause, so it's, let me just, I'm not entirely sure which section of the act is that, I guess 10, or it's on page 10. You know, there's terrorist act means A, and then it lists 3 things, and then adds after that, and is intended to, and it lists 2 more things. Wait, for the purpose of advancing a political, ideological, or religious cause. I left that part out, that's my bad. But that is part of the intention, regardless of which one it is, to intimidate the public or to compel the government, for the purpose of advancing a political, ideological, or religious cause. So I am fairly certain that if the government just tried to slap gangs with the anti-terrorism laws, a court will say, no. Basically, a defense attorney could get this probably thrown out fast, well, maybe not as fast as the Privy Council with the Auditor General's case, but, you know, almost as fast. So then you would probably need, because you are basically trying to put in place something that will infringe the rights of citizens, whether they're criminals or not, you would probably need a 3/5 majority or more. In that case, write a whole new bloody law and stop being lazy, because you can't. Because I don't know what to tell you. This is in our legal system, finance.gov.tt, unless this is something old and or out of date or inaccurate. Basically, it has various definitions of the violence or the an act, whether committed in or outside Trinidad and Tobago, which causes or is likely to cause, and it lists out property damage, loss of human life, and other things, and is intended to compel a government, intimidate the public for the purpose of advancing a political, ideological, or religious cause. Illegal profits from organized crime is not any of those 3 things. Maybe I'm wrong, but like I said, you'll probably have to rewrite laws anyway if you wanted to apply, to the point where if you could do that, you could just write new anti-crime, anti-gang, anti-gun, anti-murder laws. You don't need to dip into the specialized well of terrorism. But again, whoever coined the phrase, the term terrorism, did the whole situation an injustice, because terrorism is not intrinsically linked to terror. It has nothing, it is not, the definition is not about causing fear for no good reason. That is a very kindergarten approach to the English language or to the legal system. Can we please stop? Lastly, I'll just mention this. A Labre UNC constituency executive chairman, he has a very interesting question. He says, I'm also aware that the UNC has screened persons who are not members of the UNC, meaning the trade union candidates. He asked if this is true and for an explanation as to why the UNC is breaching its own constitution. Now, I do believe there was a report that said that those 2 candidates were, at least I think Clyde Elder was, I can't remember the other gentleman, they were potentially part of the MSJ and they left the MSJ. I don't know if they're going to join the UNC and then if they're going to do the dog and pony show for appearances to make them members and candidates of the UNC, or if they're going to just let them be outsiders and somehow be candidates for the UNC. I would just like to point out that it's very interesting that a third party, not third political party, but literally a third party to the UNC, or an outside party to the UNC, is apparently being allowed to utilize UNC resources to advance their agenda. That's interesting. You know? I mean, if only the UNC's executive would put things in place so that they would not potentially be taken advantage of with regards to outside entities utilizing their resources. Kind of puts that whole Guy Griffith thing into a whole different NTA spot with the UNC into a whole different perspective. Let's take a break. When we come back, we go into the daily review. Stay tuned.
Do you need treatment for obesity or any related abdominal procedures? The community hospital now offers minimally invasive laparoscopic surgery done by an American-trained, board-certified surgeon with over 20 years' experience. Give us a call at 235-5479 for more information.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Hello there and welcome to AM Prime on WESN Content Capital. Before we even start this repatriation and reintegration process, we've already failed, or are we doomed to fail?
You've got to invest in the institutions that you've established to carry out those sorts of core functions.
We now get into the regional updates to give you an understanding of what's happening across our neighboring islands.
We have available a number of films that are worth showing.
So it was day one when the French Revolution started to develop the concept of universal human rights.
What happened this time is unprecedented. It's one of the largest terrorist attacks in history.
Let's welcome Carl to the program. Carl is over there, next to himself. Hello, Carl.
Silky anteater or pygmy anteater, and we have two of the three species of anteaters right here.
SM Group International Limited, your solutions partner for the latest innovations, brands, and competent staff to meet your needs. We provide products and services in the following divisions: executive services, event rental and services, power and heavy equipment, construction and property management, food and beverage, aggregate and sales and distribution. Check out more on our products and services at www.smgrouptt.com. Contact us at 221-7445 or email at info@smgrouptt.com. We are SM Group International, your solutions partner.
The best for your baby is at thebesttoys.com. From the best strollers, car seats, baby carriers, high chairs, booster seats, rockers, jumpers and bouncers, walkers, baby blankets, feeding accessories, bathtubs. Visit us in store at Forces Flagship McLean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 332-BABY. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this: screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN Content Capital.
I mean, it's in the name, right? Terrorism. So obviously it has something to do about terror. It has nothing to do about politics or ideology and the intention behind. No, it's only about our feelings, right? I mean, by that stretch of logic, when I do a project for a university assignment and I have to have a bibliography, I just need to put the Bible in. I don't need to actually put my references because it's in the name, Bible, bibliography, right? If we just go with that level of logic, every English word that has been coined, has a direct reference to the meaning. There's no such thing as false friends in languages, none whatsoever. That said, I just had to continue the ranting because that mindset is far too widespread and it bugs me because that just tells me there's a lack of understanding in how a legal system and a criminal justice system and an anti-terrorism system is supposed to work and how the world to some extent works. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. You can call in later and have your say. But in the meantime, right now, we're going to kick off today's Daily Review. And this is a story that was highlighted to me by a friend of mine over the weekend, and that is the various aspects with regards to the SCA, but one of them being, it's becoming more difficult and people are profiting off of it and what's going on. Because first of all, where do I begin with this? Now, let me just get the correct organization. There was the president, I believe, of the National Primary Schools Principal Association, Monique Scipio Daniel. She noticed a change in the structure of the placement examination, right? When she used to teach SCA, it was a simple placement exam. But she is saying it's almost as if it's a competition to see which writer can write the best question or the harder question for the children. And then it came out a couple of things. One, some of the authors are secondary school teachers, and potentially those teachers, they may, or not necessarily those teachers alone, but I'll get back to that point. Some of the writers are secondary school teachers. There's a phenomenon potentially where stuff that should be taught in secondary school might be questions in an SCA exam. Now, granted, technically speaking, the SCA to some extent is on a curve, right? If everybody fails, it's not like the class is not going to advance into secondary school. They will, and whoever does better than the others will get their first choice, etc., etc. But why does it have to be that hard? Because the second thing is this. Some of the writers might be secondary school students, teachers. Some of them might be primary school teachers. And then now there's the whole thing about which teacher is able to kind of prep their students because they put questions in the essays so they know at least some of what's coming. And then there's a whole next thing with regards to selling practice tests based on the expected, not necessarily the exact questions, but questions, on the topics or in the format that is that could be coming in the essay, putting those in new practice tests, right, being written by some of these teachers apparently and sold to booksellers who then sell it to the public. And the question is, who is profiting off of this, right? There's also the question with regards to who is benefiting from the existence of elitist schools. But I would caution some of the, because there was something said by Senator Paul Richards, Dr. Paul Richards, where the elite secondary school maintain their privileged status through highly selective admission processes, failing to deliver the necessary competencies and perpetuating social inequity. Now, here's the thing. I don't know if you could have the failure to deliver competencies and perpetuating social inequities with regards to an education system at the same time. I don't think you can. To some extent, I don't think anyone is complaining that the prestige schools are failing with regards to the teaching side of it. They may be failing with regards to being a symptom of a wider problem, but I think the wider issue is more to the fact that, okay, the prestige schools are at a certain level, and the rest of the school system, to some extent at least, are not. And why? And should this be allowed? Because it's one thing if the prestige schools were up here and the other schools were here at a good area. But it's another thing when the prestige schools are somewhere in the good area, but too many of the other schools are somewhere at the bottom, right? You can't even see where my hand is because, you know, potentially they're outright failing their students in various ways. Not all because of the same challenges school to school. They will all have their own unique challenges. Some of it will be the environment of the school, where the school is. If it's too close to a crime hotspot or whatever ridiculous situation that should not be near a school, that the school is unfortunately located near that situation, the students could be living in unfortunate circumstances. The teachers may or may not be good or bad, right? There are some bad schools that probably have good teachers, some good schools that probably have bad teachers, including prestige schools. But for whatever, and then of course there's the point that, look, the prestige schools tend to have some of the wealthier members of society, those that either can't afford or do not want to send their child to a private secondary school institution. And they support their prestige schools, right? The rich kind of get richer. They attract people with more resources. They attract the better teachers. They kind of suck. In a way, it's kind of like a microcosm brain drain of we attract the best teachers, we attract the best students, so we do the best and you do worse. The system is not really that great, so the bottom end is potentially collapsing every year. Every year. So this situation here, then there's the whole thing about textbooks and, you know, teachers who write textbooks to make money, and there's a new edition every year, and I believe this happens in secondary school. But to what extent is the whole SCA like, because my friend who pointed me to one of the articles that came out over the weekend, how it's just getting harder, he's like, look, he's seen the issues with the education system with his oldest child. And now his second child, his middle child, he's already seen where the inadequacies of the education system has set her up for failure. Because she had undiagnosed conditions, and it goes back to my conversation with East Port of Spain, the head of the East Port of Spain Learning Center. Square pegs in round holes. There's no capacity to diagnose. First of all, it's not even if your child has some type of learning disability. To accurately diagnose the learning style most optimal for an individual student, whether it's a disability situation or not. Child could have no learning disabilities, but maybe what they need to excel, even if you want to teach them math and science, the teaching style might not be what is offered in the one-size-fits-all teaching program that we have, right? And he's basically said he's given up. Because to some extent, it's a placement program, and there's so much pressure being put on these students to excel. I think that one of the articles said that they know of some students who, if they don't place top 3, they're devastated. I think the minister may have said this or somebody else. If they don't place top 3, they're devastated. They could have great results. Why have we reached this point with the SCA exam where it's a psychological, to say it's a burden is an understatement. It's like a guillotine hanging over their necks. And then on top of that now, we're going to make it harder. I think, I could be wrong, but I may have read something as crazy as stuff that should be taught in Form 3 or Form 4 was being asked in SCA. I could be wrong about that. So, then there's a whole set of other things about which demographic is doing well with regards to geography, race, religion, etc., etc. You know, exam dishonesty, academic superiority, and to some extent segregation. That's a 4-letter word. Someone needs to tell some of the liberals in America, hey, there was a reason why it was marched against by their predecessors, but you know, maybe it's lost on them. I don't know. I don't think I would like to see a segregated Trinidad and Tobago or a segregated Trinidad and Tobago education system. But if we allow certain things to happen, we're going to get there. And a lot of it stems from this, from how the SCA is being run, is being handled, is being formulated. And more we're seeing too many negative things coming out of this exam. And I don't even think it's achieving to what extent it was intended to achieve, which is, at this point, what? Because now the disparity in education is so bad that it's almost like if the SEA is a rhetorical death sentence. You do bad here, that's it. For the rest of your life, we have no plan B for students that cannot do well in the SEA. And if everybody did well, the competitiveness of it, and make note of this way, because we'll get back to this later on in the show, the competitiveness of it will leave many students out to dry, the ones that are at the bottom of the ladder, no matter how well the curve is, no matter how high the average or the median is. We are not prepared to educate all of our citizens, and yet we tout free education for all. And that's why it's not working. All right, let's move on to the next topic. I don't normally look at murders, but this one, it gives questions and it has further implications. There was that triple murder in Guanapo. 3 individuals, a woman, her brother, and her common-law husband, a younger gentleman to her by 19 years. The motive for the murder is unknown. Some people are wondering if the common-law husband, Mr. Francois, if he may have been involved in something. They don't necessarily think that, you know, Miss James and her brother were involved in anything. Now, we don't know for sure. We can't say that with absolute. I don't know the people. I can't say 100%. I know for sure who was or was not involved in any funny business. There's a chance that none of them were. The reason why this matters to us is we need to be very careful that gang violence is not spilling out. It could be an extortion thing. I mean, you know, she had a little shop at the front of the building where they resided, of their residence. Not necessarily the wealthiest of targets for extortion. I don't know. It could be a protection racket. It could be that they saw something they shouldn't have seen. We don't know. The thing is, potentially, this is an indicator that crime has spilled out and touched normal people. And we're not talking about, oh, they had a target at a bar and they were standing next to the target. This was a home invasion, not to rob, but to kill. Potentially to just outright execute. There was also a child, a primary school pupil who was shot in both legs. It didn't say what was the caliber of bullet. I'm hoping it was pistol rounds, 9mm or something like that, because heavens forbid, I wouldn't want to. 5.56 NATO was designed to penetrate you and to tumble in your body to cause grievous wounds in a not too dissimilar way that a hollow point round would. Right? It doesn't necessarily have the stopping power to put you down immediately, but it's meant to physically tear you up inside to eventually drop you dead. So that now maybe in a child's legs, they're so small it literally just go right through, and a 5.56 bullet, the bullet itself is not that big, that's why it doesn't have the stopping power. But just to think that a child got hit in both legs, maybe they were grazes, maybe it wasn't bullet wounds that he suffered from. Well, no, I think they said he was shot in both legs. But we need to know, I think, listen, the public doesn't need to know the ins and outs of the case. Doesn't need to know the intelligence and the evidence and whatever. But to some extent, it is pertinent. It is pertinent for the public to have an understanding as to what exactly happened and why it happened. I don't think the police will ever really want to reveal the motive unless it doesn't paint them in a negative light, because their PR situation is at a nice edge. They don't necessarily know how to handle it, and it doesn't help that they have a very serious PR situation at the top. But let's not forget, and this is something I wanted to highlight even yesterday, but I'll continue with the next story. Let's not forget, we're in a state of emergency. So I would just like to ask people, you know, do you think it's reasonable that if we're not talking, again, it's a mass casualty incident because there was a drive-by and they just shot into a crowd. They went into this house deliberately. Now, maybe they got the wrong house. I don't know, but the point is they were looking to go into a house to kill people. Do you think that we're safer? Or is the state of emergency a Band-Aid that is suppressing things, but it's not making it go away? Let's move on to the next story. I want one time, because the Commissioner of Police, they are now, apparently now, looking to investigate the White Collar Crime Bureau. They're looking to investigate the Commissioner's financials. And I do believe, I want to get at the bottom of the article, her lawyer, Pamela Elder, senior counsel, who basically said, they have no evidence when she was released after she was arrested. This is her quote. It's odd that this is their position. They are doing this after my client was arrested. And it goes back to what some stakeholders or some analysts said, commentators. You line all your ducks in a row. You cross your T's, you dot your I's, you make sure all the paperwork is well, properly written out. There's no mistakes, everything is clear. There's no smudges, there's nothing left out, there's no incompletes. Then you arrest somebody like the Commissioner of Police. You don't, oh, well, it looks like maybe they've done something bad, maybe. So we're going to arrest them now, then go on multiple fishing expeditions. Apparently, they went to the DPP 3 times, and the DPP said, hey, try again. I am not in those words. I'm paraphrasing. And now they're like, oh, wait. Now, granted, there was some time. The thought is, of course, the DPP, he had his own personal situation. So that would have hit the pause button. So we can't necessarily say that the entire length of time has been wasted, right? But with that said, now they're like, oh, maybe we should look at our financials. Now, here's my problem. This screams further fishing expedition. 2 things. 1, with regards to the actual situation in question, rifles with the SSA, nothing about corruption and financial kickbacks was said with regards to this, right? Nothing that implied anything like that, corruption in that direction, was given to us when she was initially arrested. This did not seem to be part of a money for FUL scheme. This seemed to be more like a SSA, breaking proper procedure, breaking proper authorization, gone wrong. In which case, let me remind people that Major Roger Best was also arrested and released, and yet somehow it was almost as though he kind of was arrested too, because given what they initially wanted to charge Euler with, they had to arrest him, and when they had to release him, at least to the public, maybe the media is not looking into this, maybe the leaks is from the TTPS, so they're not necessarily they're not following whoever is leaking whatever, is not following what's going on with Roger West. But notice, his situation is not necessarily public news. Now, one of the daily newspapers actually does have an article basically saying that the attorney representing Mr. Best, they have not received any correspondence on the investigation since his arrest earlier this year, and I do believe, again, he was released. So, apparently the headline is, he's like in a limbo. It's almost like if he was completely secondary to the situation, and the real focus was on the commissioner. And there's so the second part of that white collar thing, it's a fishing expedition. Now, maybe it is that people within the police, everybody knows the dirt on everybody. But if that's the case, because again, if you knew things but you're only doing something about it now, why wait? Is it that other members of the executive are potentially compromised in different ways? Because the thing is, here's the thing. It's not like they discovered evidence and then made a case. It seems as though they believe they know something, and now they're trying to find the evidence of it. And we're not talking about, oh, we believe they discovered a crime recently. It almost feels to me like, well, we know stuff about you for the longest while, so we could arrest you, and wait, we don't have evidence? No, but we can find the evidence. We'll dig for it now. That's what it feels like to me. I could be very wrong. This is to some extent instinctive, not fully just analytical and logic, because proper analysis would probably have 2 or 3 other scenarios which, my brain It's not going right now for whatever reason. It's stuck on the fact that I think they probably figured that she was corrupt. You know, we have that basic assumption here in TNT, everybody's corrupt, whatever. And it's like they're expecting dates. They're expecting her financials to be bad, when ironically, there's a good chance that her financials are fine. Because, at least with regards to FULs, the whole situation was she wasn't giving out any. So, at least with regards to that, I don't really have an expectation that you could reasonably accuse her of taking money for FULs. Because she wasn't giving out any. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she sneaked a few in that went under the radar of the press. Who knows? This whole situation stinks because at the end of the day, this is going on. Let's get it back up there. During a state of emergency. And what does that say with regards to our state of emergency? Where crime is suppressed but not forgotten. And when this ends, because we can't stay in a state of emergency forever, at this point, what have we achieved long term? I'm not hearing about guns being confiscated anymore. And I wonder how many of these arrests of gang members are going to stick. Meanwhile, there's a seemingly, potentially botched investigation into the Commissioner of Police during a state of emergency. And the motivations behind all of this, there are many questions in the public sphere, questions to which we don't necessarily have the answers to, will never probably get clear answers to, but will potentially and ironically, in a case that may not be directly their fault, but indirectly their fault, may harm the re-election chances of the current administration. Because some people who followed orders, who by all accounts needed certain authorizations to do what they did, were promoted and are now kind of acting the fool, maybe. I don't know, depends. Maybe you might view this differently. Now, not going to take a break. I want to head straight into a video that I found for you. It's with regards to the education system. I thought, all right, we're talking about what's failing. We have issues. Part of it is we have resource issues. What can we look at that is outside the box? And to my surprise, because I'd never looked at this education system before, I've heard about other European nations, but not this one specifically. It's considered the top in the world. It is ranked very highly in the metric when you look at 15-year-olds, you know, their skills, their math, reading, science skills, you know, they're ranked very highly. And their system is, dare I say, one of the most different systems to ours that I have seen, maybe the most. And it's interesting, and I wonder what we could learn from it. I'm talking about the education system in Finland. For more, well, it's time to cue this.
Do you know that Finland doesn't start formal education until the age of 7? That's right, 7. And the students have only one standardized test at the end of their schooling, spend less time in class than most other countries, and yet consistently rank among the top performers in the world in reading, math, and science. Sounds too good to be true, right? Well, it's actually true. Finland's education system has been praised by many experts and policymakers as a model of excellence and innovation. So, what is this secret sauce? And what can the rest of the world learn from this Nordic powerhouse? Let's find out.
When you go to the first grade, when you are 7 years old, the amount of hours is 20 hours a week. It's the minimum. And then it gets more hours the older you get, but it's still less than in many countries.
The country has a 100% literacy rate. While many countries focus on standardized testings and hours of homework, Finland places a strong emphasis on personalized learning and fostering creativity. In fact, students in Finland have one of the shortest school days and least amount of homework in the world. But hold on, this doesn't mean they're slacking off. It's quite the opposite. According to the latest data, Finland consistently ranks at the top of the Programme for International Student Assessment rankings, which assesses the knowledge and skills of 15-year-olds in reading, mathematics and science. In the most recent report, Finland outshone other countries, showcasing that less can indeed be more when it comes to education. In Finland, it's all about quality over quantity. There are also no private schools or tuition fees in Finland, and all education is funded by the state. This ensures that all students have access to high-quality education and resources, and that there is no competition or ranking among schools, teachers, or students. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Finland's education system isn't just about cramming numbers or memorizing facts. It takes a holistic and interdisciplinary approach. Picture this. Students aren't just learning math, they're also honing their communication, collaboration, critical thinking, creativity, and citizenship skills. It's like getting a toolkit for life along with your textbooks. In fact, Finland has a national core curriculum, which is revised every 10 years and which defines the common values, objectives, and principles of education. So, Finland's not just teaching kids what to learn, it's teaching them how to learn and thrive in the real world. Moreover, Finland students have the power to shape their own learning experience. They can choose from a plethora of courses and subjects, allowing them to explore and discover their interests. And it doesn't stop there. Finland encourages students to dive into extracurricular activities, join clubs, and engage in projects that fuel their curiosity. The result? An education system that nurtures not just economic prowess, but a holistic development of each student. Now, here's a concept that might surprise you. Playtime. Finland believes in the power of play, recognizing that it's an essential part of a child's development. Play is seamlessly integrated into the curriculum, promoting social skills, creativity, and problem-solving. Research indicates that play-based learning not only enhances cognitive skills, but also contributes to a positive attitude towards school. In Finland, even primary school students get a 15-minute break after every 45 minutes of instruction, allowing them to recharge and stay focused. Well-being is another key priority in Finnish education. Schools promote healthy habits such as regular exercise and a balanced diet. They also provide students with support for their mental and emotional health. Children often have the same teacher for the first 6 years. The teacher gets to know the students well and is able to develop the tuition to suit their needs. Moreover, unlike many countries, Finland doesn't have standardized tests until the end of high school at the age of 16. This means less pressure on students and a more equitable educational experience. The gap between high and low performing students in Finland is among the smallest in the world. Now, let's talk about the real heroes behind Finland's success, the teachers. The teachers are required to have a master's degree and are selected from the top 10% of applicants. The teachers are expected to collaborate with each other, with parents, and with other stakeholders, and to engage in continuous professional development and research. They're not just using traditional methods. They're like educational alchemists, employing strategies such as inquiry-based learning, project-based learning, cooperative learning, and problem-based learning. And here's the beauty of it. The teachers are also given a lot of independence and flexibility in their work and are not evaluated or monitored by external authorities. Finland has a high regard for teachers and considers them as professionals and experts in their field. On average, the starting salary of a teacher in Finland is somewhere around 32,000 euros, and they are considered equivalent in status to doctors and lawyers in Finland. Another key feature of Finnish education is the high level of trust and autonomy that is given to schools, teachers, and students. It has a decentralized education system, which means that the national government sets the general goals and guidelines, but the local authorities and schools have the freedom and responsibility to design and implement their own curricula, methods, and assessments. Another key aspect that sets Finland apart is its commitment to equality. Finland's education system is designed to be inclusive, with minimal disparity between schools. Whether you're in a rural village or a bustling city, the quality of education remains consistently high. Finland believes that every student has the right to learn and succeed, and that education is a public good and a human right, not a privilege or a commodity. Moreover, the country has a strong focus on inclusion and diversity, and supports students with special needs, immigrants, and minorities in mainstream schools. Finland also has a high proportion of immigrant students and offers them language courses, cultural orientation, and integration programs.
That video, courtesy a YouTube channel, Money Uncharted. Now, some of the information is not necessarily, with regards to things like how they treat teachers and the philosophies behind the education system, that remains. The placement with regards to the academic results has not necessarily been quite the same. I do wonder if part of that is because of the whole phenomenon of digital screens and what happened throughout the pandemic. But ultimately, there are many things that seemingly work in Finland that we could take away with regards to how teachers are treated, how teachers are compensated, how the curriculum is created, or rather, guidelines and core curriculum are created, but how you get there is seemingly up to the teachers, the amount of responsibility and respect given to them, as well as the, I guess you could say, the financial model by which they operate under, which in some ways might be cheaper than ours, but in other ways more expensive. They have smaller classes, 20 students. It is interesting, that phenomenon of teachers in the first few years, basically the same teacher being with the student, going all the way up. So it's not a standard one teacher. It is a this class teacher, and I know you, and you know me, so we could cut to the chase and get to the learning, and I know what makes you tick, and I know how to get you to respond, and how to engage your mind, and to engage your curiosity, and I know what's going to lose you, and I don't have to figure it out each year with each new class, and we move forward. Now, of course, again, all of their teachers have master's degrees, and 10% of applicants you have to be in the top 10 of applicants in order to be considered. So it's a very, very heavy profession. Can we go so far? I don't know. The compensation, 32,000 euros, that's 227,000 TNT dollars. Now, depending, the teachers are also very unionized over there as well, don't get me wrong. But depending, can we afford to do this? I do think we don't have to necessarily implement what they do wholesale, but their approach to teaching, to foster community, to foster not competition, but to foster helping each other. There's no advanced programs for gifted students, apparently. Instead, gifted students, they're expected to help the lower performing students, which in some ways probably is a good teaching tool in of itself. If you could teach somebody the coursework, then you yourself need to grasp it well enough. Either that means that you grasp it well, or you will have to buck up and understand it better and deeper in order to then help somebody else or to teach somebody else. And that whole thing about trying to figure out, okay, how to engage children at their own pace, look, one of the things apparently that they do is they have a lot of foreign language media with subtitles. Why? Because reading is so important to them. They encourage reading with physical books. They publish a lot of books, not just tablets. So again, that could be one of the things. But also what they said with regards to playtime, with regards to recreation, with regards to breaks so students could recharge, young students could recharge. 20 contact hours in a week, think about that. I do think that's essentially 4 hours of actual teaching a day. Whereas most schools are somewhere around the lines of 6, right? And when I think about my primary school experience, to some extent, I think a lot of my primary school teachers kind of knew, listen, I could teach, but then at some point, even though it's not break when they leave the classroom, there are going to be lulls during class time so that students could decompress, whatever it is that they're doing, right? Some informal breaks in between while they're marking tests, you know, or what have you, once you just don't make too much noise. That used to happen at times, right? It wasn't just rigid teaching from bell to bell. Not so much in secondary school, but it still happened. And to some extent, perhaps it's necessary. And that whole concept of playtime in groups for children to learn how to socialize, I think is one of the things that's underestimated. And more importantly, given the fact that when students come home, what do? They might socialize, but they're socializing through this. How often do they actually meet up with their friends to do anything, to play? No, they're playing like this, I get it. But then, yes, to some extent, that's not worthless. But now then, perhaps it might make how schools utilize break time and play time and recreational time and extracurricular activities that are not academic activities, how those programs now might be even more important than they were then. Because it will allow students a chance to have time face-to-face to do things other than digital experiences. Whether it's play in a field, play a sport, play a musical instruments in a band, talk about whatever it is. How, now, again, not saying that we're going to just take this translated wholesale, because just to transition to anything like this would be hard. I would say let the private schools, and private schools in Finland, you need to be authorized to do it, and there's no tuition. Everything is paid for by the state, including if you're one of the few private schools that exist. They start at age 7, which is not necessarily too far. I mean, standard one is age 6, but technically primary schools, you know, infants 4 to 5. Preschool goes, I believe, to about age 6, age 7. And then from age 7 till 16, you're essentially in school. And then for another 3 to 4 years after that, you're in a version of Form 6, which covers both maybe Form 6 curriculum as well as, unlike Form 6, actual first year, second year university stuff, community college stuff. And then it prepares you, and they have a vocational track and an academic track, and you could switch. You could switch midway. You could go and do a vocational school up until 18, 19, what have you, and then go to an academic university if you qualify. Or you could do, in regards to that pre or post comprehensive stage, you could do both. You could touch on both. Like, there's a lot of flexibility built in. How would we do that? Probably we need to start from the primary school level, especially if any consideration is given to having teachers journey with classes as opposed to, you know, relay classes. So you might need to start maybe with in a primary school, and then again, you know, okay, junior, senior infants or what have you, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds. I'm not sure if you want to say, okay, let's allow a certain group of students to just be, or have that for that year group basically be an extension of preschool, because that's what they do. And then you start off one teacher going on, as opposed to having now with this year group, you have, I mean, I don't know, economically speaking, how it would work, if it would need more teachers or not with regards to how you implement it. And I don't know how easy it will be to start. My fear is if you try to do something radical like this, and you kind of do it in like a very few pilot cases or even just one, it would be easy to just kind of brush it aside, especially if it doesn't work. And if you just have one example, there's a chance it might fail, not because of the system, but because of other factors. So how would you do it? And then it will be a program that, you know, you could only really see the effectiveness as you go from 7 years to 10 years old, to 13, to 15, to 16, to assess it. But I do think that there's a lot of things that have merit in it. And I would argue, maybe not $200,000 a year, but I have no issue with teachers being given more respect and more compensation because, and this is the key point, tutor, they're not just being paid to show up. The demands on teachers, the responsibility they have are significantly greater than what you have. Because you're trusting these teachers to figure out the nuts and bolts of how we're going to deal with the curriculum over the span of several years, not just 1 year. And maybe that's one of the reasons why it works. The personalized or individualized approach can work because it's not being handed off to another teacher that's going to do a different thing, that's going to try a different way. Instead, it's going to be consistent. And one of the things that I know from sports is if a player is in a system that is consistent, they're not having to do with different systems all the time, the odds for their success increases. for their long-term success. And these are adults who are professional in a field where they spend, maybe upwards of 60 to 80 hours a week working on their job. We talk about kids. We talk about starting at 20 hours a week when they are 7 years old. We don't have that contact time to compensate. That's why it's quality over quantity. It's not about how much hours you have to teach them, but rather what you do in those hours. So I have no problem with this. I have no problem. We don't have to try and just blindly push for the whole system to change overnight. But we already have situations where this lack of consistency, both in the curriculum, year to year, and I guess also arguably teaching styles, and then when you go from primary school to secondary school, to some extent, it probably adds to the anxiety of students, and it is a hindrance to their capacity to learn, because they're spending emotional energy trying to deal with each individual teacher's quirks. And last, I just want to point out again, it's not about competition. The SAA thing is a competition between students and a competition between schools. And then which school in the secondary school system is better, that's a competition to get the best students from the SAA thing. Their system is about collaboration, not just between students, but also between schools. And to some extent, ironically, I'm not a big believer of, oh, everything needs to be equal and throw meritocracy out. You're not necessarily throwing meritocracy out in this. But to some extent, this system does seem to have mechanisms to allow the people at the bottom to catch up, as opposed to focusing for people at the top to go further. Because that actually is not necessary. Getting the people at the bottom to catch up, that is necessary, because at the end of the day, when you get to university level education, to some extent, you're starting from zero. Your GPA coming out of secondary school doesn't matter as much. If you really want to excel, you can excel, and that's about having the core skills as an individual with regards to critical thinking, collaboration, communication, leadership. And all of these things, a lot of the extracurricular stuff is being baked into this education system, and those are things that I don't think we have enough of in our education system. When you get well-rounded students that have a capacity to operate and function in the real world beyond just academics, because they need more skills than just that, that's setting them up for success. Now, can we do it? Are we willing to look beyond whatever it is that we do? I don't know. Will it cost more money? Will it be cheaper? I'm not sure. That is one of the things that we have to determine as a nation. Do we want to spend more money on education if we could significantly improve it, or are we trying to do it on the cheap? Because right now, similar to marijuana, we're in this middle ground where we're paying a lot of money for an education system which is not necessarily at the level of production within the cost bracket that we're in. It's almost like we're paying for a Porsche, but we're getting a Toyota. There's no knock on a Toyota. Toyota's fine. The education system, at least the system that it is fine. The results maybe is not fine, but that could be execution. That could be a whole host of other factors and variables, right, that we need to account for if we want to do a proper assessment. But the education system, as it is structured in its basic sense, is fine. But we're paying for a Mercedes now. So what are we willing to do? How much are we really willing to invest? Because too often our investment seems to be short-term, not well thought out, and have very minimal returns. What are we going to do now with our education system moving forward? This is just one aspect. I did want to tie this into my overall, how I think the country could be fixed if you start from day one. You deal with the HR situation, you hopefully save some money in the public purse with regards to salaries, then you deal with the education system, and maybe you could start here with primary, here with a few schools, build them up, see how it works. It may give us savings, depending on what it means to the teaching dynamics. 20 students per classroom. But if we could attract better teachers, then we might not have a shortage. It might, however, have a higher teacher bill, but maybe that's fine. All right. There's so many things I want to talk about this. There's so many things I want to say about this. This is one of those topics that I think I'm very passionate about because I've seen with regards to French children and my own family members, some of the issues. And I am scared for those who cannot figure out a path. Not everybody has enough resources to compensate for this nonsense. And that's where we find ourselves. And it's not just in public, it's in private too, there's nonsense. Let's not just think it's a government problem. It's a societal problem. Society has to be willing to fix it. It has to have the will to fix it. Not just the political will, but the societal will. And perhaps with regards to other things too, we should be considering that. What is the societal will in this situation to do with crime, corruption, political corruption, the education system? They utilize sport and music. Just saying. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll open the phone line. Stay tuned. This is talking about the WSND Content Capital. We'll be right back after this.
My name is Dr. Joanne Williams-Carroll, and I am the Director of Behavioral and Mental Health at the Community Hospital. At the Community Hospital, we believe in nurturing mind, body, and soul. Through our counseling and chaplaincy program, we will provide you with support and strength you need to help with your mental and emotional well-being. Give us a call.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
I'm back here on Talking Point on WSND Content Capital. Once again, yes, it's not quite all roses with regards to the results of the Finnish education system. What they're seeing now is not necessarily what they've seen maybe 10 to 20 years ago, but it's a very interesting approach, which includes utilization of a vocational track in their schooling, right? Now, maybe not as early as we were talking about in weeks ago, but still, you're looking at, I think, 15 to 16. And they have a couple of other differences that perhaps we could learn from. Not taking it wholesale, but what are the positive aspects? There's so much to this. I'm probably not doing it justice, but this is probably going to be one of those things that I'm going to hit on a semi-regular basis moving forward. I'm going to keep bringing it up. I'm going to keep trying to figure out, what's the best way to maybe apply this, or maybe, because maybe in Finland they kind of took a good thing and they went too far with it, right? Maybe, or maybe the needs of the moment has made some of what they do or what they did obsolete. But I would argue maybe not. I do actually think that it addresses certain things, unique challenges in the digital age that other education systems don't necessarily do. And I guess one of the key things is the emphasis on the child's interests. Because as an adult, I could just say that it's so much easier and more enjoyable listen, the whole adage of, well, if you do what you love, you don't have to work in your life, that's not exactly true, right? You're setting up an individual to fail because they'll be like, why does it still feel like work? It's still going to feel like work. But your interest makes the work easier because you will naturally have a certain degree of curiosity into that field. And because of that, you will excel. It will be natural for you to do the work. No matter how arduous it is, it will be what comes naturally to you. And just because you have a natural desire to do it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be the best at it. There are many people who have a natural inclination to a sport. They're not the biggest, fastest, strongest, tallest. But in the case, I think it was Muggsy Bogues, 5'3" basketball player, he decided my height not going to define me and I'm still going to be an all-star. Because his passion for that craft, that sport, that drove him to success. And the passion for the work to motivate you. How many people that have you heard of, they became doctors because it pays well, not because they actually cared about healing people. And then you know, some of them might be bad doctors, some of them might be average. Very rarely do you hear about doctors who excel, unless it's maybe plastic surgeons. And monetary incentive to not mess up in most cases. Okay, fine, right? But that's a cosmetic surgery situation in some cases, not all. But how many doctors, or they're just a doctor because they wanted the money, and they end up being average doctors. Not necessarily based on you want if you need life-saving surgery. Anyway, the phone number's up on your screen. You can call in and have your say, of course. We could talk about what I have spoken about or anything that I have not mentioned today. Since I brought it up today, I am curious as to what more you might have to say about the education system and the SEA exam, which I think is slowly losing its relevance, becoming obsolete, and is eventually going to use up its usefulness. Given the trajectory that we're going, our education system's issues, they're seemingly, we have problems and they're growing, and if we don't make a great change, they will just continue to fester and expand, and the negative outcomes will increase. They will increase. The world is one of those weird things. Now immigration and illegal immigration is harder, so maybe less people might migrate. Those who can legally migrate might still do so, depending on the economic situation. It's not always easy to migrate. Some people, they go to the United States and Canada and then they come back because it wasn't so easy. It doesn't always work out. For some people it does. And that everything is a balancing point. And as things change, the overall equation needs to be rebalanced, to borrow a math term, right? Economies do not like being unbalanced. That's the whole thing about a graph. Demand and supply, and when you do external forces to try and force an outcome, it tends to do funny things in an economy. And they're similar with regards to now how we're treating with opportunities for our students and how we're educating our students, and then what that means for the economy moving forward. Because we had a gate. We forced tertiary education onto the system. Not onto the population opted in, obviously. But we essentially forced we're gonna upscale all of the skills of our population. And did it work? No. Because it unbalanced the equation, so to compensate, it just basically moved the bar. Oh, well, to get this job, now you don't just need O-levels, you need A-levels. Or you don't just need A-levels, you need a bachelor's. Or you don't just need a bachelor's, you need a master's. It just kind of moved the goalposts without actually giving us any beneficial results, because we still have a potential functional literacy problem. We still have an economy that cannot necessarily provide enough opportunities and enough variety of opportunities for our citizens. And we still have an economy that doesn't seem to have the capacity to grow fast enough in order to meet our needs. That's the scary part, the Dutch disease. The lack of innovation, the lack of new investment into new business models, to new industries, for new ideas. I mean, yes, it's nice. We have new flavors of whatever beverage. We have new offerings of whatever fast food. We have new fast food outlets. We have new clothes outlets. We have we have new restaurants. Okay, we have new. Everything that is new is more of the same. New groceries. All right, but that's not a new industry that could offer a different variety in jobs so that we could retain our people. Does not increase manufacturing per se. And to some extent, we are suffering from inequalities of scale, basically. And until we figure that part out there, everything local is probably going to look less attractive than just buying from a foreign brand. And we'll never be able to produce everything that we consume, granted. But why is it that we're not even trying to produce in certain goods most of what we consume? Can't we at least do that? Our population is not so big that we are crowded out Trinidad and Tobago and we have no more space to grow. We have Tunapun on the line. Good morning, caller. You're on air.
Okay.
Go ahead, caller. Mute your TV, though. Mute your TV. Don't try to talk to me on your TV.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, calling from Tunapuna. In respect of the education system, let me just make one little point and you're going to understand why we reach this, where we reach in education. When this government, PNM government, came into power, the former Minister of Education, Garcia, in his first 5 years, he had was to go to Lakshmi Girls Hindu College to give out the presidential medal. Realizing that, you know what was the decision by this PNM government? To destroy education. They couldn't handle that. And they break down education from scholarship, from everything. That is the reason why we are in this situation, having you have to talk about education like that today. They destroy education is not their concern. They believe with a Duncy population, people will continue to vote PNM. That's the reason why they don't like education. That's all I want to say this morning.
Thank you, caller. Anything else? That's it? All right. I'll say this. And I said something to this effect before. Then Minister Garcia probably was not anything close to the best candidate of being Minister of Education. He was a political appointee or someone that played the political game from one position to the next. That's how I view it. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say he failed upwards, but I will say that I never witnessed him do anything to give me any degree of confidence with regards to his personal abilities. I have no idea what they were. I have no idea what his successes are. I never saw him accomplish anything, personally. Not to say that he didn't, I'm just saying I never saw it. So to some extent, that's the first 5 years of the Keith Rowley administration. If you want to say that they never cared about education, I can't disagree with that. Because the minister, the then minister himself, did not provide me with anything. Maybe I'm forgetting something, but I was not given anything, whether during his time as minister or the time that I knew him from before, that would have given me any sort of confidence that I could say, no, it wasn't like that. You got it wrong. No. There's nothing that I could refer to that could counter any sort of claim that the education system was not well run. Now, under the current Minister of Education, and to some extent, we do have to consider the fact that part of the problem is the Ministry of Education doesn't control the budget. The current Minister of Education was kind of looking okay a little bit, but at the same time, yes, I get it. In both cases, for both Garcia and Gatsby-Dolly, they're playing with the deck to some extent stacked against them, but still, that doesn't mean that they just wash their hands into it and say it's somebody else's fault. So Stuart Young has said that he wants to change the curriculum, but we have to wait and see because it's not just the curriculum. Anyway, we have Siobhan on the line. Good morning, caller, you on there.
Hi, good morning, Sean.
Morning.
So over time, I've noticed a couple of things. One is the passion that the education system, in terms of the teachers, had is kind of no longer there because so many things have changed over time. But what I wanted to bring to the forefront is there was a time we had a Minister of Education who brought on the purpose of education for all, right? And understanding the purpose of that at the time was extraordinary. And it worked only, to me, only for probably the first 2 generations that had access to that education for all. Because what it is now is that everybody is focused on education, on academics, meaning all these things that were in place back then in terms of post-primary and, life skills and all the different things.
Yes.
Those things have changed. Even in the secondary schools now, things are coming away from the woodwork and the, it's only technical drawing now because people into engineering, all those things, but all the other things, the clothing and textiles and all of that. So these children, so now, because there is education for actually all, right? The people, not only children, parents too, are taking it for granted that this is what it is. So the fact of learning isn't there. So when in our time, everybody went to school to learn, right? And there were only a handful of children, not learning and all of that. Now there's a greater percentage of children who are there in school because they have to be in school or because the system supplies the school education for them rather than them craving to learn or wanting to learn. There's a handful of children who are there in school to learn, but a greater majority not there for that. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. And I'll that last point, before I respond to everything else, I'll go on further. Students, I think, there's no joy in learning. It is so regimented and so turned into a task, and ultimately it goes back to the whole competition of the SCA, competition of primary schools, competition of secondary schools. So it's turned into this machine where, it's almost like if my self-worth is tied to my SCA results. And that's across the board, from the top down to the bottom. And I'm not learning in primary school. I am training to pass an exam. I'm not learning. And I only got a joy of learning. I may have had it in primary school in some extent, right? But I only rarely felt a joy, because you spoke about joy in teaching. I also think it's important for students to have, listen, not everything is going to be fun, not everything is going to be joyful, but to have a joy in learning. And I only had that in my very late 20s, early 30s, going back to school at the tertiary level. Because at that point, it's a tertiary level, it's business school, I had work experience, I also was more well-rounded an individual, 1. 2, I also was better read in general topics, right? That I was better equipped. And when you're going to school, the emphasis on academic learning as opposed to non-academic methods or vocational subjects or life skills and non-academic subjects, non-academic skills, I think it's at a service, because at some point it's like, you're boring the hell out of me, and my brain could only fake enthusiasm so much. And to some extent, I wonder if that is part of what is also killing the enthusiasm of the teachers as well. Because it's just this training machine where you need to pump out SCA, CAPE, etc., etc. We have Tunapuna. I think Tunapuna might be back, or a new Tunapuna. Caller, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Yes.
I want to make a correction with a misconception.
Uh-huh.
I was not condemning Garcia. I was condemning the government for the 5 years that they had with Garcia. The Leslie Girls Hindu College excelled.
Yeah.
So it prompted them to how they're going to start to destroy this smooth sailing. This is my point. I am not condemning Garcia for one moment. And with that success of Leslie Girls, they were very uncomfortable with that. So they decided to destroy the education system, starting with the scholarship. Remember, we had 400 scholarships in this country, and they brought it to 100. So that prompted them. That 5 years straight scholarship, presidential method prompted them how they can destroy education.
Well,
so I'm not condemning Garcia, as I said, but I'm condemning the PNM for the success of Lakshmi Girls Hindi College that prompted them to destroy education.
Yeah.
I hope that is understood. That is my
point. Thank you, caller. I get that's your point. And to be frank, if you want to interpret, I was saying my position on Garcia. I wasn't interpreting yours. I was saying mine. Because I don't know if you would want to classify me condemning him, but I am criticizing him. I am. I'm outright criticizing him. That was one of probably this administration's worst ministers. Not to say that they aren't just as bad ministers now, and they weren't just as bad ministers then. It wasn't like he was some special snowflake that was just so egregious. But no, they didn't bring him back, right? Now, but to be fair to him, part of the problem was budget. And I guess that goes back to, look, they had to scale back Gate. Funny enough, we couldn't afford to waste money on Gate anymore, so now they had to start to be careful. And maybe you could argue they're being too, I guess you could say, bureaucratic with Gate and putting too much stress on the students, when they should have started it at a reasonable level from the beginning with regards to being responsible with how they disperse money. And unfortunately, I think a consequence of our economic situation is the scholarships, as well as a consequence of our economic situation, as well as the mismanagement of Gate and similar situations. It has caused the decision makers to think, oh, well, to solve the problem, we just have to scale back. We don't necessarily know how to manage things. So in that regard, yes, despite our economic challenges, I will agree with you to the extent of I'm not necessarily going to just say that's the reason why the scholarships are reduced and it's fine. I'm not going to say it's fine. But that's not the thing that concerns me. That bothers the people at the top of the education system, which to some extent, that's not the real failures of the education system. I'm talking about people that can't really pass SCA, but they're thrusted into secondary school anyway. Some of them are so illiterate they can't write their name. They can't write their name. They're going into secondary school, they can't write, they can't read. They've gone through a 5 to 7 year primary school system. I don't know formally what all schools is, a junior and senior infants, I don't know. But they can't read, they're going into secondary school. The education system is failing the bottom rung of the performance, academic performance of our students from the very beginning. And a lot of the times it compounds. Students who, yes, some students want to learn, and other students, they're just there. And then they start to not, and they're not doing well because they don't have the motivation to learn. And then the poor results compound themselves, they fall further and further behind, and then they seek to drop out. And some of them look to a life of crime because the system failed them, because it's a hell of a thing to kind of put the responsibility on the students to figure out a certain aspects of life from the age of 8. Because think about it, you have to prepare for SAA. So you have to figure out a certain mindset as a human being from single-digit ages so that you can be ready for SCA and set yourself up reasonably to move on throughout your secondary school career, your tertiary career, if you decide to do so, and your working career. That's crazy. They should be guided through carefully. Children should be guided through carefully the process until they reach the point where they have the capacity to make the significant determinations of who they want to be and how they want to do it for themselves. But to some extent, they can't think about it. We are telling our 7, 8, 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, you all need to kind of figure out certain aspects of life that we don't even know how to begin to explain it or describe it to you. Because they have to do well in this exam that could make or break their entire life. Because that's how we have allowed it to be perceived by society. And that's why education for all, yes, it turned into math, science, business. Oh, vocational stuff, life skills, what's that? And I'll never forget, one of the deans in my school spoke about a high-achieving student that went abroad. And he was concerned for him because, well, it seemed as though the lack of life skills caught up with him, because when faced with situations that offered him temptations he never had to deal with before, because he was sheltered in his academic box by his family that only cared about academic success, let's just say life hit him with a ton of bricks. And how he may or may not have come out at the end of that, I don't know, but he should have never been put in that position to begin with. And we'll end that there. Folks, make today a good day, as my co-host, Mr. Shaw, would always say. Remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other. We could only do all of that if we want it, if we try. Societal will. It's nice to be nice. Stay safe. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Do you need treatment for obesity or any related abdominal procedures? The community hospital now offers minimally invasive laparoscopic surgery done by an American-trained, board-certified surgeon with over 20 years' experience.
Give us a call at 235-54